Hello and welcome to another episode of our Gauntlet series. This will cover 2 matches at once, since one of those has just a very quick AFK win and didn't want to make this one into a separate episode. For the first game, we face here against Wheat Kiwi, and Wheat Kiwi has quite an interesting lineup. They bring the Sedge Sevier deck, which is historically a very all-in aggressive deck, just trying to use the Absolver with Zed and basically overwhelm your opponents that way. And the middle deck is the classic Lysandra and Thalia Thrall deck, just trying to get those frozen thralls out and then get a very quick combo win. It's very good against controllish styles and a little bit weaker against aggressive decks. On the right side, we have the little bit covered again, I'm sorry for that, the Kindred and Nasus deck, which is a pretty old deck. It is kind of similar to what the Thresh Nasus looked like and tries to slay a lot of units, be a little bit of these Shadow Isles, Shuriken midrange deck, and then overwhelm the opponents with the gigantic Nasus plus Atrocity. For our lineups, I have feared the middle deck the most. We don't really have that many fast decks or that many fast answers because the Tunnel Gnar and Darkness deck both need some time to win, so I was afraid of the Thralls matchup and the Thralls deck and decided to ban this one. I also just don't like facing Thralls. I have a very bad win rate against it. My opponent then decided to ban Darkness, and we once again had to choose between these two, and I just chose my favorite matchup with the Scout deck, just as the last few rounds before. And we find ourselves in the Nasus and Kindred matchup versus Scouts. The one thing that you really have to notice is that we won't have any way to answer a Nasus ever. So once they get him out, it will just be pretty much game over, because all of our units will have -1 -0, and we have to pretty much win before that. Kindred usually is not a big problem, because Scouts is just such a swarmy and interactive deck, so we should be able to take them out. However, we have to eventually win the game. But if they are very aggressive, then we can also control the game a little bit more. These Shadow Eyes Shuriken decks have always had pretty much variants in draws. Either they just rush it down with Ravenous Hunters and Ravenous Butchers and random aggressive cards, or they just go for more late game with the Rite of Negation, Atrocity, etc. This is our opening hand, and what would you mulligan here? So it should be pretty obvious that we don't want our 6-cost card in hand, and our 1-cost card is of course an obvious keep. Even if we don't have any other way to activate Plunder, just getting something down on turn 1 is very, very strong. And I've thought about keeping one sharp side because it's usually quite good, but I prefer having my curve first before I keep any interactive combat tricks. And that seems like the more consistent approach. But I wouldn't blame anyone for keeping one of the sharp sides here. Game starts, and we just have no run out of 1-drop. An opponent has a Ravenous Butcher start, very aggressive, and we just take the free block on the Spiderling. Not sure what the motivation was behind this attack. Then just play our Broadwing out, and don't want to trade us. This is 3-2. The Broadwing is more valuable later on. Doomkeeper comes out, and a Cursed Keeper, all of the Keepers. Then we play our Vanguard Sergeant, and then there's the first block where you just take the obvious blocks. Now that you always want to kill down the last 5 units as well, because then they can't kill them themselves. And we just run out our barrier guy here, which should also be pretty obvious, and then we sharp side take down the Kindred. And I was thinking a little bit about this full attack. In case they have any kind of way to save their Kindred here, then they could block my other guys, and then all of a sudden I would lose all of my units basically. But there's basically no way for them to save Kindred here. They could have a double Shadestone, for example, would be the only thing I could imagine at this point. But that seems very, very unlikely. So I think this attack is pretty safe, but definitely a point to consider. Next turn comes around, opponent plays a Stalking Shadows and a Cursed Keeper, and then they just time out and never play a card again, basically give us a victory. I skipped over that. Also want to show you how it looks like when they time out. You will have this long screen of something, and then it will say opponent failed to connect. And this is basically what happens if the opponent AFKs. You just get the free double win. And yeah, unfortunate ending for the series, but I can't really do anything about it. And yeah, just wanted to include this one free win basically. Let's move on to the next matchup. Over here we see the second lineup. On the left side, of course, the Na and Trundle timeline stack, basically what we bring as well. In the middle, it looks like one of the old Invoke lists. There was an old list running Zoe Diana, and then different regions, Pendle City for value, or I saw one with PNC before. The Shadow Isles version just tries to build up a big Diana and then atrocity it into the enemy nexus. On the right side, a little bit covered, we have a Tristana, Teemo, and Yumi deck. And quite interesting deck. And I personally don't like playing against Nightfall. I think it's one of the least pleasant experiences. So I went with the middle ban. However, you can also make arguments for the other two decks. But I thought the other two decks would be a little bit more fun. Especially the right deck was probably a Yordle Arms deck. So I thought I had pretty good chances against that. We find ourselves in the first matchup here, and it's Darkness versus the Timeline stack. And at this point, when this was recorded last Monday, I didn't have any experience in either side of the matchup. Now I have played the Timelines matchup a little bit more, but still have not a lot of experience with the Darkness side. And it seems like the Timelines has this one big tempo swing, where they basically on turn 8 make the Ice Pillar and get the big 8 drop, and then you have the combination Buried in Ice and the 8 cost card that obliterates all landmarks. And this is the one big tempo swing, and once Darkness overcomes this tempo swing, they should easily win. And Darkness should also have like an advantage in the early game, because Timeline has a hard time dealing with the Veigar. And I think it's kind of 50-50 in the matchup. Shouldn't be clear for anyone, but the long game definitely goes to us. And with that in mind, we head into the mulligan. What would you mulligan here? This was my mulligan decision. Again, I don't say it's the perfect one, but this is what I went for. Veigar is of course our key card. We always want to have it in the hand if the opponent isn't like super aggro. If they're not the Spider Burn deck, then we always want to keep Veigar. I didn't want the Rope Maker yet, because I rather had some more early game. Keeping Ruination might seem to make sense, however the opponent runs multiple copies of Aloof Travelers, so we don't want our Ruination to be discarded on turn 4. We want it to be in our hand at the turns 8 or later, so mulliganing it is also quite reasonable. And we don't really want our Dark Blue Acolyte yet, because it's more of a late game card or like just a 2-2 blocker. However, we will just generate a Darkness with Veigar anyways, so there is no real point in keeping this Dark Blue Acolyte in our opening hand. The game then starts, opponent plays Timeless on turn 1, pretty good start for them. And we play out our Catalyzer, they just Thermogenic Beam it. Pretty unfortunate, but what can you do? They have a lot of answers for the thing. We pass turn 3, and on turn 4 run out our Veigar, generating the Darkness. Opponent goes for the Aloof Travelers, and which is quite unfortunate. It hits our transformed Veigar now. I was fine with it before because we have the Withering Veil in hand, but it unfortunately hits our Veigar, who is now 5 cost. In fact, before anyone writes any angry comments, we didn't misplay by playing out the right Veigar. Aloof Travelers doesn't go from left to right. It's just a random selection. We just got unlucky. I have tested this intensively before. It is not like discarding from left to right with equal cost. It just discards randomly. And it can't be determined, so there was no misplay involved with which side of the Veigar we played here. Aloof Travelers transforms into the Patricide stack, which takes damage for the supported ally, one of the newer cards, and they run out a Trundle. And this is quite an interesting decision point. We first run out our Contrologist. These are our options. I quickly pause if you want to make a decision yourself. However, it should be pretty obvious that only the 2-mana card does something here. Opponent then goes for an attack, and things at least about attacking, then just passes. And this is a very good decision point. My big decision point, our darkness is at 4 stacks right now, so we have deal 4 damage with it. And we could technically try to take down some card here with the Vile Feast, or the stack at least, with the Vile Feast and the darkness. However, I wasn't really afraid that much of the stack, and we don't really have 1,000 darkness generators in our hand or on our board, which we only have the Dark Blue Acolyte, so I rather wanted to preserve my darkness in hand and use it when it's more buffed up. Our hand is pretty bad right now. We have a bunch of 1 damage effects, the Withering Veils, the Go Hard, the Vile Feast, which is kind of bad in this matchup, so we want to preserve our resources to actually do something, and I decided to just go for a pass here, and then on my turn also open up with a pass, because if we just go back and forth, then my darkness gets stronger, and I didn't feel the need to act. I go for the Ferrous Tendency, I think like a half an hour about it, and it transforms into a 2/3. I have edited this part out. And then the turn passes over, which leads to another interesting decision. The Aloof Travelers here is quite unfortunate here. They have the second copy, which then discards our Ruination. That was my big game plan here. Just let them run out the Ice Pillar, make the big turn, and then just answer the Ruination. However, the Aloof Travelers kinda ruined us here for the second time. For the first time discarding our Vega, and now getting rid of the Ruination. Quite unfortunate. This leads us to our turn, where we want to think about what do we want to do here. Do we want to target any of the opponent's units? Do we want to take something out? How would you proceed here? I decided to try and take down the Trundle here, and our opponent played this quite excellently by just like not reacting to this, and then, wait for it, went with a pass. And this was a great pass by my opponent, basically knowing that I just targeted the unit with regeneration and have to invest another resource, otherwise this was just for nothing. And I just wasted my darkness basically. So this pass, really, really good. Big compliment to my opponent here. And of course, we just have to react immediately. I decided to just play out the Go Hard and target down the Trundle. They don't have a response for that. They could have had a Trojan, for example, but instead they go for the attack. How would you block here? So I just go with the Controller's block and then play out the Dark Blue Acolyte, and opponent now plays the Sabotage Beam, another very, very good play. We can't run out our Thirst Defense anymore, and the opponent also played around our Mist's Call. You still have to go for it, but because Controller just dies, this is the perfect opportunity. We miss the 50-50 and lose out here a little bit. The next Controller is pretty boring, but basically our hand is now all garbage. They get the 8-cost transform into a Raza, and we try to kill the bird with darkness, which succeeds. But the rest of the game is not that interesting. We still talk through it. Na comes down. We try to kill the Na. However, they have now found a Troll Chant from the left side, as you can see it. And yeah, not much we can do about this anymore. The Na transforms. We just are running out of cards here. It's all about conceding, skipping over the Na animation. And Na just think about how to attack. But at this point they have so much card advantage over us because he just randomly drew both Withering Veils. I will probably cut the Withering Veil in the future because it just doesn't do that much anymore. It was from the Ari meta, but this is more of a mid-range meta, so the Veils are probably better served as Vengeance, for example. And yeah, you can see them keeping transforming. And I decided to play out my Rekindler. but they go for the Buried in Ice, and this is the combination I was talking about, where they basically have all of these frozen tombs. We try and kill some stuff, however, they just have the Soil Agent first, because they did not actually want to transform the 8/8, but then they have the It That Stares. We go for like a little bit of a cleanup, play out one Withering Veil. However, that just was a poor tech choice for this meta. And they go for the Obliterate All Landmarks, and at this point, I'm just tapping out here, and no real point in playing it out any longer. I decide to show you what happens, and then I'm going to tap it out. And this leaves us with our next choice. I will just run back in with Darkness, because I have more expertise with Darkness, and we face the opponent's probably Yordles and Arms deck. I figured it was Yordles and Arms because of the Tristana being part of it, and Tristana wants multi-region. The best cards for multi-region is Yordles and Arms, so that seemed quite obvious. Yuumi and Teemo seemed kind of random. Yuumi doesn't actually count towards Tristana level up or towards the Yordles and Arms, but probably is just a good value card. And yeah, we definitely win the long game, and they will rush us down if we let them. For our starting hand, what would you mulligan here? I went with this mulligan. The Ixali Sentinel is nice against aggressive decks, but still not something you want in the early game. And the opponent will focus on killing us. They don't even play PNC for a Simultaneous Beam, for example. They will have no way of taking down our Veigar. So you don't need the stress defense. Pokéstick is of course nice against something that have 1 health. And that was what I mulliganed. Game starts. And we don't have a 1-drop. Opponent thinks for a while, plays out a Teemo. We go hard to Teemo. And opponent takes some time here and eventually plays out a Contrologist. However, they take forever and then just time out completely. So basically another AFK win. They just run out of time and in the end time out once again. Pretty sad. I don't know what happened here. Maybe the internet connection broke down. However, they are back here with the third matchup. And they are actually back, so this will not be a second AFK win, because I had like 5 AFK wins in total in this game. And this was a normal match. So sorry for not being able to showcase the other games. Not really in my hands, my opponent's AFK. But yeah, the Trundle Na matchup now versus the Yordles and Arms is pretty interesting, because we have the big counter card to Yordles and Arms being the Buried in Ice, if we get to the late game to cast it. And generally, versus Yordles and Arms, you want to wait until they cast the big Yordles and Arms, and then in response, you want to start shooting down units. So Mystic Shot, get excited. You want them to always stay at 6 units, maybe block something, but don't use the removal spells until they actually go for the Yordles and Arms, is my typical approach. Also, Aloof Traveler is very good here, because it just discards Yordles and Arms. And this is our opening hand. How would you mulligan here? So it should be obvious that we don't want our 9-cost card in our opening hand against an aggressive deck. And the Timelines is the namesake card of our deck, so I just decided to keep it. Not sure if it's actually that good in aggressive matchups, but I think it's still something you want. And the Three Sisters was a considerable keep, because they have Yuumi, and Yuumi can be obliterated by the Entomb. And it's a very good answer, as you only have 1 Yuumi and aggressive deck, so the Three Sisters can be a little expensive. I would rather have more early game. And of course, we keep our 2-drop here. The game then starts with me casting out the Timelines, and the opponent just passes. Very interesting. Then they go for a Fae Mother or Great Mother, Grandfather Fae. So immediately thinking now it's a Fae deck, and I'm going to show every of the Timelines picks, because most of them are just very trivial, but I want to explain once how Timelines works. And basically you only have to look at the stats and the effect of the card, and it doesn't really get any. So if you play a card with Timelines, it transforms after it's being summoned. So you don't get the summon effects, you don't get the play effects from the transformed, or the card that transforms into. For example, if you transform here into Hired Gun, we don't give an enemy vulnerable. If we choose the Dark Acolyte, we don't get a darkness. So we mostly choose between a 2-3, a 2-2 with Augment, or a 3-2. And I decided here to go for a 2-3. Just wanted to explain this once, how the timelines actually works and what you should be looking for. I transform into a 2-3, they just pass, and we proceed to just run out the Flame Chompers, take a 3-2 here over the Fearsome unit, and opponent just runs out the Owlcat, we attack in, they block, so just pretty fundamental stuff, and they have another Grandfather Fae, so definitely starting the Fae train here. This is just something that will happen. You will be outclassed, or like outvalued, or like not outvalued, we have outswarmed. We discard an Atrocity here, kind of hard to see, but that was the game plan as well. Just make a trick to Stana and then Atrocity in. This is why this deck plays Shadow Isles, otherwise it's just a typical Fae deck that goes wide. Currently only has 2 regions played, Bandle City and Ionia, so we don't have to be afraid yet of the Yordles and Arms and can run out our Na. However, they do have an answer in Buster Shot, a card I haven't seen in a long time. But we still have enough mana to shoot down the Bandle Commando. And not sure what I'm thinking about here. Probably just thinking about attacking or not attacking. But in the end, I will be not attacking. And next turn comes around, they play the Gleaming Lantern that discards or discounts all of the Fae. And we get rid of our second Copsong Timelines, just transform into another 2-1. And as you can see, most of the transformations are kind of irrelevant, because we just want the jump blockers. They go for the Yuumi here, and we don't have the mana to adulterate her right away, so we just play out our Trundle as a blocker, and just jump block, preserve some life total. We win the long game, so we want to get there. Pharaoh's Financier is next, and this is another interesting choice. What would you pick here? So funnily enough, after playing this deck a little bit, I think you never pick Revitalizing Roar, even against aggressive matchups, because you just don't have any big cards in your hand ever. The biggest attack you have in your hand is 4, so with Na you can heal 4. Aurora Borealis also seems pretty terrible most of the time, unless you have the infinite mana. So Battle Fury it is here once again. And here, thinking a little bit about just the vanilla guy or the Toad. Actually choose the Toad here, because the 2 life can go a long way. And they discard our Buried in Ice here with the Luft Travelers. Now they have 3 regions, PNC, Ionia, and Bandle. We just go for Frostbite here, stall a little bit, or I guess it's our attack token. Prepare our attack a little bit. They pokey stick down our Archer, and we just attack with Trundle. Here's Regeneration. And they go for a jump block. And now the Bandle City Mayor comes out. And we still don't have to worry about the Yordles and Arms yet. However, now the Loping Telescope gives them Targon, so now we know next turn they can play out a Yordles and Arms. However, they start by... they just go for the Yordles and Arms immediately, and this is the point where you really want to act. You don't want to act before with your spells, but here, how would you react to this Yordles and Arms? I hope you found a line. And we just went in with the killing most units possible. First of all, you obliterate the Lantern. This will also get rid of Yuumi. And then we just shoot down shows the Rent of the Fair. You can also go for the Mayor. And yeah, they just get a little buff now. So you can also Frostbite one of the guys and get a Bookie here. Not sure about that. You could also go another Tawny Toad, but I thought I would look for more impactful cards here. They have a Teemo, and we can just jump block the big attackers with our small units. And I kind of also take 8 damage here. A little bit surprising. I wouldn't necessarily have done that if I look back to the game. But I kind of felt during the game that I'm running out of cards, which is definitely a reasonable argument. We draw a Thermogenic Beam and an Ice Quake. So here is one of the biggest decisions in the game. Which 8 drop do you take here? And it should be pretty obvious. We want the Dreadway here. The Dreadway is just the strongest card here by far. Leviathan seems like it puts on a lot of pressure. However, the Dreadway also doubles the damage you do through attacks. So not just your spells and skills, but also the attacks, the combat. Rasa would just be a vanilla 8-6. So it's very important to take the Dreadway here, as you will see, for the remaining of the match. Trundle levels up. And now we have a Dreadway. We now suddenly threaten lethal, basically. They go for a messenger drawing a card. And we just go in. The Yordles and Arms decks usually don't run Minimorph as far as I know. So they just face an insane amount of damage. -15, so they have to block everything. And go down to 3. So now a Get Excited would win it for us. However, we still have to face the next attack. The next Yordles and Arms maybe. They play a Graf Grenadier. And another Maya. Searching for another card. And we don't want to play the Icequake here, because it would kill our own board as well, and it just will refuel anyways. We rather want to keep our hand intact for the next turn coming around. Arena Bookie discards our Icequake here, and we draw a It That Stares. Very good draw, of course. And we would survive the open attack easily, just like push 5 damage or something. And remember, they are not playing the typical version. They don't play Get Excited, they don't play Mystic Shot. They have no direct damage other than Atrocity. And they take some time here to decide what they do and run out the second Yordles and Arms. And this is where the Dreadway really comes in handy, because our It That Stares now deals 6 to everything and will clear their whole board. And this Dreadway really won us the game. A little bit of a BME mode here, but I just found it very funny. They just beam down one of the other guys, just prevent some damage taken, and then just go for the blocks. Remember to keep your Trundle alive here, because the Trundle will eventually win you the game, or next turn will win us the game, because they don't have Minimorph, and the overwhelm damage is just too much for them. You just go in, and they have no blockers, and we win. So another 2-win victory, like every victory. A little bit unfortunate that the one game was the AFK loss. I can't really change it, and yeah, I don't like winning AFKs. I prefer actually losing in Constructed over winning, because then I can learn something from it. For example, in the first game we lost, I learned how the Ruination is not a good keep, how the Vega is sometimes a little sketchy around the loot feathers. So I really like losing actually over winning, and getting these AFK losses is kind of unfortunate, to be honest. That's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.